Hello, hello, everyone. Thanks for dropping in. This is Healing Body, Mind, and Soul, and I'm your host, Aeriol Ascher. Today, I have the honor and privilege of having a very special guest. Today's guest is Carl Schirtzer, and I met Carl, maybe some of you were listening when a couple months back, I went and recertified myself or got recertified and hung out with some of the people from Transform Destiny. And Carl was the wonderful instructor who did that hypnotherapy class that I mentioned earlier in our episodes. We have him here today. I am so thrilled. He is he has such a long list of accreditations. I won't even go into how many things that Carl is certified in as a practitioner. But what I really liked about him is he's very personable, very well-versed. And I think that everybody is going to want to lean in and hear what Carl has to say about whole self-care today. Carl, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, you are so welcome. And the obvious thank you for having me. It will be a pleasure to spend our time together.
Awesome. I am so excited that you're here today. I know that you are an NLP master, and you obviously, I was in your hypnotherapy class, but for anybody who doesn't know what NLP is or what that's all about, can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about that specific work that you do?
Sure. So hello to you who are listening. Again, my name is Carl. I am, as we just announced, a board certified trainer of NLP and hypnosis, also a master practitioner. And what that generally means is there's this notion of preventative care that we can look at with how we interact with the world, right? So I'm sure on this call you've talked about the body, you've talked about the mind, you've talked about the spirit and the interaction between the two, particularly the body-mind. Well, the field of NLP dabbles in all of it, because what the field of NLP is the study of excellence. And we go around, and an NLP master practitioner or trainer is looking around at their environment and trying to connect with geniuses, natural people that have figured out how to do something so excellently compared to the rest of the world. And we study them, we model them. And from that modeling, we start to understand the capacity of the brain and how to use the mind, not just what's inside our head, but the holographic environment that talks to our gut, that talks to our brain, that talks to our heart, that talks to our knee, all of it. How do we use it to have an excellent life and get the things we want out of it? Now, it can be about helping people through trauma or releasing things that no longer serve. But what you want to think about when it comes to the field of NLP is it's simple terms, it's the user manual for our mind. How do we go through life and choose the life we want, releasing the things that don't serve and attracting the things that we desire with simple information and techniques. I hope that gives a pretty good summary for what NLP is.
Excellent. It's excellent. And so NLP, actually, the field can apply to so many things. I know that as an actor I think that NLP techniques served me well. As when I got certified in NLP, I went and told all my friends that it was good for humans who communicate.
That's right. It's a perfect. So if I can speak to that, you know, when I'm talking to individuals about NLP and they say, well, what will this do for me? I don't want to work with individuals. I don't want to create change. Why would I want to learn NLP? And my general response is that if you communicate to somebody else, you want to understand neurolinguistic programming, because in that you do learn techniques and you do learn how to control what's going on within you, but you also learn how people respond, react, and communicate. And if I start to know how people communicate, then I can become flexible. I can move, or as we were joking about earlier, I can pivot the way that I'm communicating to be most receptive to the person in front of me. See, this is not about my ability to externally communicate or to share something. Communication is my ability to have you receive the information that I want you to receive. So you start to learn that there are different types of ways that people experience reality, how they absorb information, called our input channels. And as I start to learn who is absorbing it, what channel, I can then alter my communication to get my point across. So if I'm in sales, I can sell my product with the most efficiency because I can have the person hear my message. If I'm an actor or actress and I want to get my character across, I can utilize language and body positioning to do so. If I'm in customer service, I can create an empathetic relationship that allows the individual to be heard. And if I'm working with my children, right, how do I work with my children to have them understand this life that we understand in a simple way? And as I have these tools, I become a beacon for others to understand. And that's just good for everybody.
Amen. Amen. It is good for everybody. So NLP actually gives us the tools to be good leaders and good models for
Correct.
others.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Well, the thing is this about NLP, right? It's a tool like anything else. It is a fascinating and amazing tool to understand yourself and others, to the point that if it's done correctly and taught well, you will walk out with a humbling feeling that you understand why people are going through what they're going through, and you don't take it personally. People are just doing the best they can with the resources they have available, which gives you permission to love unconditionally, right? While establishing boundaries and borders. But it is a tool. So there are many that learn NLP and do this thing called shelf help, where they learn it and then they put it on the shelf and they go, that was a good time in my life. And they just look at it like a trophy versus embodying the spirit. Those who embody the spirit truly have a magical life because they make the changes they need to make and understand people intimately.
Yes, it is a practice, not a certification, right?
True.
It's not,
Totally.
it is a practice, it is a life practice. You know, Carl, I've been doing energy work for over 30 years now. And when clients come to me, I know that I can serve them well with my hands-on work, or even with maybe some reframing language work or hypnotherapy. But unless they put something into practice and take it out into the world with them, it is going to be a one-off deal.
Totally.
So practitioners learning to support their clients so that they educate their clients and bring their clients to a new state of awareness so that they can take it out into the world and be a beacon themselves, right, Carl?
Yeah, I'm on board for that one.
Yes, it's about the practice. I mean, obviously, one-off healing, everybody wants the silver bullet, right? They want to feel better. But as a practitioner, we don't really want to be animated pill dispensers or pain. We want to empower our clients.
Yeah.
If I understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah, so that would be one thing. And then conversely, this would be the other, right? This is a great example. 2 days ago, I got hit with some really hard news. Ooh. And if you've been paying attention to my latest actions to help the world, I've been doing live feeds with my Facebook and just talking about the things that individuals will go through. And which is great is I will record these, hear the message, help those that need to be helped, and that's wonderful. And then 2 days ago, I got hit with a sledgehammer of news, and it hurt. Because I had the skills that are applied through neurolinguistic programming, after my initial response to being hit by this hammer, I could start to take those tools and apply them. I can utilize things like, we have a tool called mapping across, where I have a certain memory that has a certain emotion, and how very quickly I could change the emotion around that memory to give it a different meaning. So I looked at the event in front of me and did a technique and changed it, which gave me freedom to see it differently. And then you mentioned reframing. I also then had the ability to reframe my situation. So I was utilizing my tools in real time with real life experiences. You know, being a master practitioner of NLP or board certified trainer, or whatever label you want to call it, sounds pretty. And we're human, right? And humans go through things. So when you take any practice, I also dabble heavily in the spiritual realm. I traveled to South America for years. I've done all types of work in that regard. When you are in the current moment and you deploy these techniques, that becomes the practice. And for me, not only did it help me through a really tough time in 24 hours, but it also gave reassurance that what I was doing was serving such a good, because I was able to apply and see those results. So to me, that's the practice, is always applying it to yourself to evolve.
Yes. And becoming a master, I'm just underlining what you've already said, Carl. Becoming a master doesn't mean that human things stop happening to you. It just
Yeah.
means that you deal with them with your tools.
Yeah.
Or
I love the word master. I both love the word master because it means so much. And I don't like having a title master, because mastery is something you always look to continue on to attain, which is unattainable. However, I heard a definition the other day, which I found profound, which was you know you are a master at something when it looks magical to somebody else.
I
And,
love that.
when we can achieve that magical response, when someone can come to me with earth-shattering news in an hour, walk away and go, I feel different, that looks magical to someone who doesn't understand it. And then the title mastery comes in nicely.
I also had one of my teachers one time define mastery as sort of that carrot, like you can kind
Yeah.
of see it, like you strive for it, right? And you may achieve a certain level of mastery, but then you push it out on the stick a little bit further. So it's always a striving, it's a practice. It's a
It is.
practice.
Yoda comes out and he moves the stick, and you're like, what are you doing? I was almost there.
Darn Yoda. Carl, for our listeners, at the time of our recording today, I'm so sorry that you had a real life experience that you had to pivot from, but a lot of people are having these pivots right now,
Yeah.
either bad news or and at the time that we're recording this particular podcast, a lot of people are actually, probably most people are under quarantine and the shelter in place orders. And to me, it didn't impact my life that much, because I do a lot of virtual stuff like this. But I'm noticing that a lot of people are getting really agitated and are dabbling in a little fear. What tips would you offer to them at this time if they're feeling pent up or locked down?
Yeah. I think there's not just one tip that comes to mind, but I'm going to do my best
Go
to
ahead.
consolidate them.
Mhm.
So first thing is, when this whole quarantine thing went down, I had some individuals write me, and after a month or whatever weeks went by, probably when everyone else started feeling those feelings, and said, how you doing? I hope you don't feel like you're locked up in a coop or anything of that nature. And my response was, I feel fantastic. I feel fine, because my inner center was balanced, right? So whatever it is, whatever you're going through, if you find an imbalance, an unresourceful feeling coming up, that's your subconscious mind. So those who are unaware, our mind is not divided into parts, but our mind sometimes is labeled as parts. We have those things that we're conscious of, which is a very small fraction, less than 1%. And then we have those things that we're not aware of. Like, I'm not paying attention to my breathing rate right now, or the fact that I can stand on my own legs, firing all the muscles I need to fire. So we have a large aspect of our mind called the subconscious mind. And we have a very small fraction called our conscious mind. Now, that can be confused with words like being unconscious, which is a spiritual term, or finding consciousness. So let's not confuse the two, right? Now, the subconscious mind does many things for us, and one of them is it protects us from emotions that we're not ready to handle. Like if I'm standing on stage about to give a speech in 5th grade and people start laughing at me, I'm not ready to handle the emotions that are being thrown at me, so my subconscious mind will repress them until it's time to release. So if people are feeling pent up or they're feeling emotions come, what that is that's an opportunity that's being presented to you from your unconscious mind to look at it. And when I tell someone to look at a feeling that they have, you want to ask the question, the same question that I asked when I went through what I went through, which is, what can I learn from this? For those that feel like they have to move, they may have been moving to avoid looking at something deep within. So what do I have to learn from this? What do I have to learn from this event? What are the things that I can learn that are positive for me, that are future-based, right? And then that give me a sense of ownership. And if I can extract that, then all of those fears that you're feeling, all of those worries, all of those pent up emotions will start to release. And then you can ask yourself another question, a question of what else could this mean, right? So if I'm looking at my environment and I'm going, oh my God, I need to pivot, life is falling apart, there's this about to happen and that, and I'm projecting things that aren't real but could be in the future, a simple statement of a question, what else could this mean, gives you the opportunity to, it opens the door, just like saying the word perhaps. It opens the door for you to think of more options and realize that everything you're thinking has at least 7 other possibilities. And when you start to look at other possibilities, you, number one, feel empowered and in control. 2, you release some of those fears that you may be feeling, which gives you action, because nothing will happen until you can take some action. And sometimes action is reinventing yourself on a digital platform, like many have to do right now. So those would be some of the simplest things that I could say, is start to really pay attention to what is being presented so you can finally let it go. Because what I think is interesting, Aeriol, is if you, for example, when this thing happened to me the other day, I felt an emotion come up and I had to ask, what is that emotion? And dread was it, and rage came up. And I'm a balanced guy, so where did this come from? It went somewhere really deep. And I was thankful that it came, because if it didn't, then I had that emotion lingering in my body. And for those that know anything about body-mind connection, a lingering emotion is what causes much of the disease that we then manifest physically as a condition. If I may soapbox it for one more second, what I think is fascinating about our time right now is people are developing lung conditions. Now, if you study the body-mind connection and how emotions play a role, fear of the unknown, fear of death manifests in the lungs as lung cancer. It's one of the reasons why some people will have lung cancer towards the very end of another cancer, just because they're feeling the imminent end and they start to become afraid, so it metastasizes in the lungs. So if you're walking around with fear, you can start to listen to some of the cases of individuals that are going to hospitals, taking ventilators in hospital beds and then coming out of it alive, being tested and finding out they didn't have the condition at all. Their fear that took them over started to manifest as a condition in the lung, which aligned with what was actually happening. So if you start to feel any of those feelings, ask yourself, what is the meaning of this? What else could this mean? And what do I gain? What do I need to learn from this? And once you gain those learnings, you know, you're free and ready to rock and roll to the next phase of your life. And what I see this as generally is evolution. We're asked to evolve. Our values are asked to evolve. The way we perceive each other are asked to evolve. The way we connect, we're asked to evolve. In society, we're asking to evolve. And I think it's a beautiful thing. That would be my answer for you.
I love it, and I couldn't agree more. I'm giving you a big thumbs up. I love that you use this word. I was just using this word the other day. I kept hearing the word adapt, adapt, adapt. And I said, no, we're not adapting. Right now, we're evolving, right? Because adapt to me means put a Band-Aid or make the change. Maybe, you know, it's not as forward thinking. And I think that this is a new time. And instead of adapting, we do need to evolve.
Yeah.
You know? It's wonderful.
And sometimes evolving means to slow down, and that's what people are feeling. Well, I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the things that I noticed, at least in the beginnings of this, I don't want to call it an outbreak. I don't want to give it names that it shouldn't have, right? This generalized thought.
Totally agree.
Is this notion of, I started noticing that there were more people outside. There were more families riding bikes and playing in their driveways. They were having social distance from each other, but they were interacting. Slowing down has given people an opportunity to open their heart, remembering their family. And don't fool yourself, the way that we're going to evolve is to get out of our mind and into our heart and into our gut, and checking in on all 3 points while we make decisions, while we live our days. So yeah, we are evolving, and it's a beautiful thing.
I love what you're saying here. And something that I was noticing, if I can just piggyback on that, Carl, was I was noticing some of my practitioner friends and some people out there, they're pushing so hard right now, right? Because they're having anxiety about pivoting their business, or, you know, a lot of people are having to discover some survival stuff that they didn't know was around for them. whether
Right.
it's true or not, we don't really know. Thank you so much for giving us the perhaps
Yes.
that opens up the doors so that we don't have to, because it's so easy when you have those random thoughts of like, Netflix is showing us all the pandemic
I
movies.
know.
I'm like, oh, this is great fear marketing.
Oh, it was perfect.
So I love this. Perhaps, at this time that we're evolving. Anyway, so I just derailed myself with the
If I can
Netflix.
double piggyback that
Go
for a
ahead.
second.
Sure, go ahead.
So I will double piggyback that. And the night that I was really having my tough go, I couldn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep at all. And I went downstairs and turned on Netflix, which I rarely do. And I saw it, and I saw pandemic and outbreak and day after tomorrow and all of the end of the world things. And I was like, wow, this is perfect. Perfect for continuing to build that fear. Now, you said something about people pushing hard. In the field of neurolinguistic programming, we talk about never resist resistance. When you push against something, something pushes back. It's a basic law of the universe. And we talk about verbal aikido, where you utilize language patterns to take the energy that is moving forward and flow with it. So you step out of the way and guide the energy in a new direction. So for the practitioners that are feeling a need to push, the other thing I want to kind of lump that together with is you mentioned some of them need the need of survival. And in one of my recent lives, I talked about what fears we're dealing with. Obviously, we're dealing with the fear of death. It will all go down to that. If I can't get food, I will die. If I can't, wipe myself with toilet paper, I might get an infection, and I might get an infection, I might die, right? So all of that will lead in that direction. So we're being asked to look at what really happens when you die. And am I at peace with that? The other thing that comes up is, I told you I traveled to South America quite a bit. It was 3 years of my life where I was doing that traveling, and I asked to evolve as a person. And in that evolution, I was asked to trust in such a way that most people couldn't comprehend, to not know where my next meal was coming from, or not know where my next paycheck was coming from, or how I could feed my family. And I have children, and I have a wife, and I have dogs. And over the course of 3 years, that trust started to build stronger and stronger. With each time I had to look at a larger abyss and take the step without knowing where I was going. So this time, part of evolution, especially for the spiritual community, we have a lot of spiritual community. There was a fantastic post when the thing first hit, where the spiritual community said, this is our time. This is no longer a dress rehearsal. This is what we practiced for.
Absolutely.
And many in the spiritual community crumbled and they fell, and we're human, and that's okay, right? And they started to say, do I really believe? Who was it? Ram Dass, when he was struck by a stroke, he talked about the feelings he had because he was afraid to die. And he thought he was so centered in his being. So particularly for the spiritual community who are asking to be enlightened, this is also a time of trust. We may not have to fight for survival. We may not have to push, but we have to trust that we're going to be okay. And we may not know how. Maybe someone comes knocking on our door. Tony Robbins talks about how someone knocked on his door on Thanksgiving and gave him food. And that was trust. And you're asking, if you're going to be someone who connects with the divine energy to help and shift others, you have to have the deepest trust in the higher good. And I think that's a beautiful part of evolution that many probably listening in this group may be going through.
Right. So this is definitely a practice what you preach time in our existence, right? Definitely a practice. You've mentioned a couple times, I had something towards the end of the year last year. I had my trust moment of whether, we have it all the time. I've been a practitioner for a long time in different, but at a degree that went really deep and didn't seem to be connected to anything else. I got kind of a sideways slam. And I knew that I had gotten to a good point in my own self-mastery because I went, oh, good, this is one of those tests. Right?
Nice. That's a really good sign.
Oh, good. I got to get rid of this one, you know? And I remember years ago, I used to read runes. Carl, maybe you know what
Mm.
runes are. And there is one, and in the guidebook that I had, but I think the author of the book is Ralph Bloom. If anybody studies runes or whatever, he was a very popular because it was widespread. Publication, but he says when you can look at and it was a rune that really just, it was constraint, I think is the name of the rune, of the English version of the rune. When you can look upon it with a smile, then you have arrived. And I thought, yes,
I did it.
yes, this is awful.
Bring it on. You know, I definitely said the same thing. I don't think we ever get to a point where we enjoy it, but we start to see it with a different perspective. I'm about to release this. Wonderful. And that brings it right back home to what we said that people can do. When they look at their current challenge and they say, well, what else could this mean? It means evolution. It means it's a time to release the thing that no longer serves you and just face it. You don't have to face it with fear. Just see what this great divine, entity that I don't understand is trying to communicate, and just honor it and enjoy the ride. I like to say, enjoy the experience.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, Carl, it is so awesome to spend this time with you today. It really fun. I imagine that if you and I got going, we could do this for hours. But
wait, we have to stop already?
We do have to stop. Eventually, we do have to stop. We try to keep it in bite-sized nuggets for the listeners. I would love if you can. How can our listeners reach out to you if they would like to know more about NLP or the practice that you do, or how they can get into any of your classes, which I highly recommend?
Totally, I absolutely recommend it as well. Obviously, I'm supposed to say that, but conversely, we all could use the tools in this life. And so, number one, the first way is just send me a telepathic message. I'm sure I'll get it, and I'll find you somewhere. But outside of that, I do have a website called Potential Reached, ED, so potentialreached.com. You can always go on there. I have a list to connect with me for my sessions, for my courses. You can find me on Facebook as well. My last name, I'm sure you'll present somewhere, and it's a simple find. Either one of those is more than adequate, but if you'd like to read up on some of my services and courses, go to potentialreached.com.
Fantastic. Well, Carl, I can't thank you enough. I've really enjoyed our time together today, and I hope you'll come back again soon. I really enjoy connecting with you, and I also want to get your wife on our podcast, who is also a children's book author, and I'm sure is a wonderful woman. I haven't met her in person yet, but I have a feeling that we are going to hit it off.
Me too.
So everybody, I just want to thank you for listening to the show today. It's been a pleasure to be here with Carl, and it's been a pleasure to serve all of you. I hope that everybody has gotten some nugget that they can use for themselves immediately today to make your world a better place. So that's all from me. Until next time, everybody, happy healing.